TV. And I just decided to go live because over the weekend, we had a lot going on, and my timeline done went crazy. We sitting here trying to figure out what's going on. The NAACP has nothing to do with Black Americans because NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, it's not even for Black people. It's for people who are basically non-white, but it's an organization that's ran by white people. And if you did not know, you know, the Trump administration has put out a anti-weaponization fund, and facts over feelings. The anti-weaponization fund is not just for individuals who were involved in the January 6th little situation. Now, believe it or not, being in the state of California, I actually was weaponized by, Biden's administration, by the Democratic Party, by the DNC. So actually, I qualify for it. So, and then from a hater's perspective, because I did title The Hater Party, Gavin Newsom went on record and he knows the ins and outs of the anti-weaponization fund. And he already went on record and basically said that, he will tax, anyone who receive money from the federal government from the anti-weaponization fund at 100%. And my reaction to that is I thank God that Gavin Newsom, this is his last term and he will no longer be in office at the end of the year. So now, we're starting to put two and two together, the party of the haters, because that's a hater for Gavin Newsom to basically, do that, basically to block or to basically tax funding from the federal government, just like he vetoed a reparations bill here in the state of California. Now, the reparations bill, people really got to start understanding what's really going on, because the weaponization bill and the reparations and all of that, is going to have to come through the grassroots organization. So this is why, I'm turning up on my YouTube platform. On my Facebook platform, we have over 200,000 followers. That's where I've been if you've been missing me. But now I got to master this side. So sharing and liking the videos are basically very important and imperative. And good morning to you. Hey, Red Sun 6707. So I'll be in these comments. So if you got a question or comment, I'll basically read it off and comment about it, but I have to address the haters, and that's the Democratic Party, because we got to really understand our flesh and our spirit is at war with one another. Our flesh and our spirit is at war with one another because the prize is our soul. And we know without a shadow of a doubt, the Democratic Party has no soul. The Democratic Party has sold its soul to the devil because all they do is hate and want to take away. In case in point, Gavin Newsom saying he'll tax the Anti-Weaponization Fund recipients in the state of California 100%. That's a hater. And another hater is the NAACP, which is a branch of the Democratic Party. The NAACP is a branch of the Democratic Party. And you can watch the movie Rustin on YouTube. I mean, on Netflix, if you don't believe me. But the NAACP, they're trying to get these youngsters to boycott their scholarships. They're trying to get these youngsters to boycott the SEC schools, and their reason or rationale to boycott these SEC schools is because of the Supreme Court decision, Louisiana versus Calais, basically, which ends racial gerrymandering. So they're basically trying to get these kids to boycott their scholarships because they're taking major L's. Okay, the Democratic Party is on its last leg. The Democratic Party should not even have been here. They lost the Civil War, should not exist. So they're fighting for their survival. In case in point, the Southern Poverty Law Center basically is funding and giving millions of dollars to, hate groups to basically, kick up some dust to make it, to basically stay relevant. Because racism, is not what it used to be. Okay, because racism has a component which is due process, meaning, I'm not going to hire you because you're Black. You can't come over here because you're Black. But these things that a lot of individuals are dealing with right now, they're just prejudice. Okay, you just might not like a person just for whatever reason, but you have no power and authority to change their trajectory of their lives. But the NAACP is a hater, just like Gavin Newsom. They're trying to get these kids to abandon their scholarships. But over the weekend, the message was sent. And when I say the message was sent by two of the top recruits in the nation. One of them basically committed to LSU, and the other committed to the University of Alabama. But this is the kicker. On their social media platforms, they posted their commitment with their fathers. Okay. See, the Democrats, their experiment, the welfare state, get the father out the household, do all of these things is literally a failed experiment because, they don't really realize how important, and the roles that black men play in their sons' lives. So this is why I was so happy to see that these young men posted their commitment on their social media platforms with their dads. Okay, so that's a slap in the face to the NAACP, and they're basically telling you to kiss them where the sun don't shine. Because I know without shadow of a doubt, the NAACP is not telling the Greek system, all the Greeks in these SEC schools, to abandon their chapters. The NAACP is not telling the engineering students. They're not telling the pre-med students. They're not telling any of the other students to boycott these universities, but they're going after the athlete because somehow, some way, they think that they're running something that they're in control. And they're not in control of anything. They're not in control of anything, because what I'm saying is the NAACP has showed its hand. It's a Democratic organization that has no love for Black America, because not one time have I seen the NAACP hold a press conference, and just like they trying to tell these kids to put down their scholarships, to tell these young men in these major urban cities in Chicago and in Memphis and Birmingham and LA to put the guns down, but they'll tell these college-bound, superstar athletes to put their scholarships down. That's hypocritical. And like I said, the NAACP is a part of the Democratic Party, because I just found out that they get major funding, the NAACP, from Planned Parenthood. Let that sink in. Major funding from Planned Parenthood. Wow. So now I know why the NAACP, does not tell young women or young Black girls or girls, whatever race you are, to basically practice, safe sex. Never seen that. But they'll somehow be with an organization to basically abort their babies and to promote it. My body, my life. And the crazy thing about it is that, these abortions come at no term limits. No term limits. After the baby shower, after the gender reveal. The Democratic Party as a whole said it's okay, because if you ask any Democratic elected official about abortion, their talking point, and they're told to say, my body, my choice. That's what they're told to say, because from a common sense perspective, rape and incest, okay, that's fine. Okay, first trimester, or the life or the, health of the mom. But when you sit back and you just basically approve abortion on any level, then you're working, with the devil. Okay, you're working with the devil. And if you did not know, the Democratic Party has an atheist group, attached to it. They have Satanists attached to it. And clearly we've experienced these foreign nationals and these open borders, which was typically deemed as a replacements, but somehow the Republicans are, destroying the Democratic Party. Now, as a political commentator, I'm a nonpartisan independent. I'm a lifelong registered Democrat because I want to vote in the primaries, because if I was a registered non-political party preference, I would not be able to vote for the mayor of Los Angeles tomorrow, or the governor, because you have to wait to the mainstream elections. But, interesting fact, 27% of Americans identify and go on record as saying being a Democrat. Another 27% goes on record saying that they identify as being a Republican. But 45% of registered voters, whether they're registered Republican or Democrat, Peace and Freedom Party, Libertarian Party, Green Party, or, American Independent, they basically classify themselves as an independent. So the silent majority is real, and the swing voters typically control the narrative, but they don't want to have that conversation. So in terms of the party of the haters, I basically mentioned Gavin Newsom claims he's going to tax the Anti-Weaponization Fund recipients in the state of California at 100%. And I read through the paperwork. and I actually qualify for it. I've been shadow banned. I've been attacked by the left. I've been attacked by the LBGTQ LMNOP and the Greeks and all of that because they are a branch and a part of the Democratic Party. But as a whole and as a freedman, we're literally, leading God's people out of the burning house of the Democratic Party to our independence because we can talk to the federal government ourselves. Because if you did not know, remember, Trump basically promised a stimulus, a $2,000 stimulus when, they found all the money with Doge and Elon Musk. And then he turned around and promised 5,000 when they found, USAID and then dismantled the Department of Education. So the Anti-Weaponization Fund is a precursor for that. And if we sit back on our hands and just be quiet and let the haters win, we'll come out with nothing. But if we get in front of it, we'll literally replace the NAACP, okay, as the ABBA, A Better Black America, because the NAACP is a branch of the Democratic Party, the party of the haters. Now, one thing that I do agree upon with Jay-Z, and I'm going to go shed some light on my timeline being lit up with whatever he did over the weekend. Jay-Z said about Kaepernick in a NFL meeting that we're past kneeling. And I agree with them because we're past boycotting. Okay, I don't want to be a part of anything that the root word is boy and the other root word is cot. Okay, because COTTON, that's cotton, and boy, that's basically picking cotton. Okay, so we're moving on and we're going to do the work of the people. I've been associating with the 5% Nation. I've been associating with the foundational Black Americans, because when I created A Better Black America, it was to create a situation where, we will be site specific on, finding solutions and resolutions to create a better Black America, which will entail create a better world, because we know that poverty is the precursor to crime. So we want to end poverty. And we know without a shadow of a doubt, slavery never ended because there's a slavery loophole in the 13th Amendment. It reads neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, unless criminalized. So post-Civil War, they demonized and criminalized any Black man that was wandering, created a Vagrancy Act of 1866, just 2 weeks prior to the end of the Civil War and the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. And this is how we got the free labor, the sharecroppers, and how the South was rebuilt for free during the Reconstruction periods. And even times between those times, we was able to create Black Wall Street. We had the Negro League Baseball. We couldn't go to your whites only restaurant, so we had to create our own. So basically, we're better off establishing our own, because separate but equal is a thing. Because somehow, some way, they made sure that they destroyed everything, even the Black nuclear family. Think about it. Lyndon B. Johnson, how those niggers voting Democratic for the next 200 years, on record saying that. Okay, brought in the Negro leaders and, got the civil rights bills passed, but then he brought in Margaret Sanger, the eugenist, and gave her money for Planned Parenthood. So with the NAACP, with this hard ass of telling these young men to abandon their scholarships, why don't you tell these young men, in the communities of color, to abandon their firearms and stop killing one another? Haven't seen that. No, stop the killing. If this was about Black people, we know that's not a good thing. And then to find out that one of the major donors to the NAACP is Planned Parenthood. And now we understand and we know why, we're not, attacking teenage pregnancy. We're not teaching them to use contraceptives. We're not, preaching and teaching them or telling them to abstain, from an abstinence perspective, or running any don't get pregnant campaigns. But we'll basically tell you can abort your baby at any time because it's my body, my choice. And that's the craziest thing ever. But let me go ahead and just, close out and share a little bit about my timeline. Now, I'm going through my timeline, and every other post on Instagram was Jay-Z at the Roots, annual picnic. And I'm sitting back. First, the first time I saw it, I blew through it. I thought it was an old image of Snoop Dogg. He had the West Side Lokes. He had the Afro. I'm thinking it's Snoop. Had the same outfit, the jean outfit, oversized, that Snoop was wearing in the 90s. And then I kept on going. And I said, wait a minute, that's Jay-Z? And I thought about it. I said, Jay-Z had those dreadlocks. And when I say dreadlocks, you can't, to my understanding, I could be corrected, you cannot press out or comb out dreadlocks. To my understanding, you got to cut them because they begin to be, matted, and I'm sitting back saying, like, what's going on? So all of a sudden, he has on a fro. So either he was wearing a dreadlock wig or he was wearing a wig, this weekend. And when I think about that, I'm like, wait a minute, Jay-Z is probably, he's successful. He's all of that, but he's fraud. He's fraudulent. Okay. Jay-Z's not real. All the stories that he made up and all of that. He basically, that's not the lifestyle that this man lives. But I do agree, the one thing when he said that we're past kneeling, we're past boycotting. But Jay-Z did not become who he is until Tupac was murdered, Biggie was murdered, and then literally took the styles, took their hooks and all of that. And he's on record said he's not a writer, he's a biter. So Jay-Z is actually a part of the Democratic Party. So that makes him a hater by default, because I remember when him and Beyonce went on stage, okay, and brought Hillary Clinton out. Okay. I remember working the security detail, from a VIP perspective, and from when he went on stage at the Rose Bowl here in California, in Pasadena to be exact, on the back of his jacket, he had a Satan brand. And I'm sitting back like, man, maybe he worshiped the devil. Because like I said, if you believe in God, you're not going to wear that paraphernalia. You're not even going to play the game. Okay. So I'm sitting back saying the Democratic Party as a whole needs to be dismantled. It's the party of the haters. Gavin Newsom has gone on record and basically said he's going to tax me 100% when I get my check for the anti-weaponization funds, because I've been, targeted, by Biden administration, by the DNC, by the LBGTQ LMNOP, by the city, all of that. Okay. So they're going to run me my bread. But Gavin Newsom says he's going to tax that 100%. But that's not going to happen. But the precursor to that, okay, we are have an opportunity to get $7,000 from the federal government. So I'm basically going to say you just sit on the sidelines, don't pretty much comment or anything. Don't say too much, just basically have your conversations, underground, because that $7,000 stimulus, $2,000 from Doge, and then the $7,000, from USAID and the dismantlement of the Department of Education, because that $7,000 is going to be paid out to us by the Democrats. And we know that they don't want to pay it out. That they're going to do everything in their power to stop it, just like, the NAACP is requesting, that these young black men, put their scholarships down, but refuse to tell the shooters and the killers in our major urban cities, Democratic run cities, to put the guns down or the drugs down, because I've seen videos where here in the state of California, they passing out the drugs and the pipes, just basically let them just do what they want to do, but they won't invest in education. That's the crazy thing about it. And then to sit back and see Jay-Z, on stage looking like a fake Eazy-E and a fake Snoop Dogg, is he wearing a wig? Is what's really going on? Have me scratching my head. So the hater party has to be dismantled. And the only way that can happen if we abandon the burning house, align ourselves as nonpartisan independents, and come together, because unity is very important, and that will basically destroy their democracy. Yes, Trump is the biggest threat to their democracy, but us unifying, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, will basically be the last, straw to break the camel's back to get rid of the Democratic Party for good. So to stay in the know, and to be, to stay on top of what's really going on. I'm basically back on YouTube, done blew my Facebook page up. We have over 215,000 followers, and I appreciate you guys. So now it's time to tackle, this, YouTube, and to get us on one accord, and to have a national push for independence, a national push for sovereignty, a national push to end poverty, a national push to end slavery. And what we are shooting for is a constitutional amendment to get rid of the slavery loophole on the 13th Amendment, And Dr. King, he basically was frustrated, and prior to his assassination, he was requesting $10 billion annually for the next 10 years, to tackle poverty. So poverty is the number one issue and a precursor to crime. And then once the crimes are committed, now you got the prisons, that's slavery, because we're still trading on Wall Street for now. So with that being said, y'all have an amazing day. Hey to you guys in the comments. You guys have a good day. This is your man Bushan Glover signing out. It's Monday, June 1st, and we're going to stay at it, and we're about to get real active. So hit that like, hit that notification. It don't cost you anything. Share this content because the world needs to know what's going on. And with that being said, have an amazing day. It's your man Bushan Glover. Peace out.